My name is Jaden Cleveland. So without further ado, let's get into this. All right, this is what we'll cover within this slideshow. We'll cover what the carbon cycle is and its importance, the consequences of human impact, and solutions to said impact. So let's get into it. All right, the carbon cycle is the natural process through which carbon moves between Earth's atmosphere, oceans, soils, rocks, and living organisms. Now, normally it would be broken into five processes, but I decided to break it into six. We have the first, photosynthesis. We all know when plants absorb CO2 to make food. We have respiration, when plants and animals release CO2 using energy. Decomposition, when organic matter breaks down into the soil and air. Combustion, the burning of fuels and wood. Ocean exchange, when the ocean absorbs and releases CO2. And when fossils, basically, fossils are stored long term in rocks and fossil fuels. All right, so the carbon cycle interacts with every cycle that goes on this planet, but I'll be focusing on these two. It focuses on the when how it interacts with the nitrogen cycle. Plants need nitrogen and carbon together to build organic molecules. So without the other, they wouldn't be able to survive. Nitrogen is availability affects plant growth, influencing how much CO2 plants absorb, and decomposes release both CO2 and nitrogen compounds back into the environment during decay. And carbon interacts with the water cycle through photosynthesis and respiration, photosynthesis and respiration depend on water availability. Oceans, lakes, rivers act as carbon sinks, storing carbon. I learned that term too. Carbon sink is, yeah, I learned that while making this. And increased CO2 in water forms carbonic acid, affecting aquatic pH and marine life. So the implications for ecosystem health, these cycles depend on each other, as I've said, and can affect one another when things are in balance. Excess nitrogen can cause algae blooms, which will deplete oxygen, and then plants can intake CO2 due to the dead algae on top of the water. Things like floods and droughts can also affect carbon storage, intake, and release. So humans impact the our impact on the earth has been very, very bad, very bad. We impact the earth by burning fossil fuels, and this releases a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. Deforestation, it takes away how much forest biomass we have. So plants, and other things that go through photosynthesis remove CO2 from the air for us. And our transportation, our cars, our buses, our planes runs on fossil fuels. So they release a ton of CO2 into the atmosphere. And the consequences of this, these excess greenhouse gases trap more heat, which in turn raises the temperature of the earth. The oceans will absorb a lot more CO2, and this over time will turn it more acidic. And since the temperature of the earth will continue to rise, permafrost glaciers will begin to permafrost and glaciers will begin to melt, resulting in raised sea levels. Here are some solutions that can help balance the cycle. We can improve public transport and have electric vehicles. We can we can make the process of reforestation affect a wider range, and we can also enforce laws to protect our forests, and we can switch to renewable energy like solar, wind, hydro, things like that. And these things have been happening and will continue to happen. Like for example, in Costa Rica, originally in the 1940s and 50s, 75% of Costa Rica was covered in forest, but then loggers came and started chopping down the trees, And so the forest biomass in Costa Rica was diminished to as low as 21%, as you can see by my figure over here. But in 1996, Costa Rica's government banned cutting down trees. They outlawed it. And the following year, they created the PES program, which paid private landowners to protect forests and provide service to protect the forests. And this has worked tremendously because today we've almost made it back to our 75, but it's cool, slow steps. At least 60% of Costa Rica is covered by forest again. Another example is the Paris Agreement. Dude, I learned this today, actually. The Paris Agreement has 5 goals. It is aimed to keep global warming below 2%, is to save and increase forest area, to increase adaptability and change, to limit temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and is to make finances consistent and align with goals. On December 12th, 2015, 190 parties or countries adopted this agreement. Oh, hold on. Go back to this. Go back to this. The countries have to openly report on their plans and their progress every 5 years to keep them in check. So basically, the countries must establish climate specific goals to reduce their carbon footprint. And this will bring us to the end of our presentation. Um, this is just reiterating everything learned within this presentation, how carbon is one of, if not the most crucial cycle for the sustainment of life, how carbon, through the cycle, carbon touches every level of the living world from the atmosphere to the ocean floor, how human activities have disrupted the balance of the cycle, how this is caused climate change, rising sea levels, things like that, and how we continue to destroy our planet with deforestation. And I feel that to combat this, we need to create more laws and policies to promote sustainable solutions like reforestation, forest protection laws, and emission reduction laws. And these are my sources. Well, thank you for listening to this presentation. Again, my name is Jaden Cleveland. You have a good day.